Good morning. I'm John Manitowabi. I'm the land use planner for the Wikwemikong Unceded Indian Reserve, located on Manitoulin Island. I've been there for the past 7 years as the land use planner, and hopefully you enjoy the presentation I'll be presenting there today. To begin with, yesterday I was sitting at the bad boy table with the M&R boys, and I was talking to Mark about how things were going for him in the morning yesterday and the afternoon. And I told him, well, I'll give some good news for you tomorrow, Mark. And then he goes, okay, good. I said, try working with Canada. Canada's almost a 3 times as slow process as working with M&R, so I believe Clint probably would say the same thing too, because when it comes to land registry and land transactions, working with the feds is a very tedious process, and you got to get accustomed to it. We're working with an 1800 Indian Act. Okay, we've been doing species at risk on Wikwemikong for the past few years, and it's been going very successfully. And not myself, I've been managing the program, but we also got our species at risk coordinator. We got a botanist that's been working with us, and it's pretty much been all in-house. That's the species at risk coordinator. It's one of the boats we found on one of the islands when we were surveying. And the one on the left is the dwarf lake iris. For those of you that don't know where Wikwemikong is, we're located on the eastern portion of Manitoulin Island. We also have lands on the mainland east of Killarney Provincial Park, and it's the ones highlighted in green there. We are the largest land-based First Nation in Ontario. We are approximately 54,000 hectares in size. We are currently also going through a specific claim for the islands immediately around Wikwemikong. We have a band population of approximately 7,400, which approximately 3,400 are on reserve. We have band infrastructure is huge. We're just pretty much like a city infrastructure. We got everything in there, lands and technical services, everything. Regarding the land base, as I mentioned, we are the largest land base, but we also manage approximately over 200 kilometers of shoreline on Wikwemikong and approximately another 80 kilometers of shoreline on Point Grondine. Okay, and as we're moving forward regarding species at risk, where we got to where we are today, it was all because of this land use planning. I am the land use planner, and we had to do the land use plan for Wikwemikong, and we incorporated a whole lot of data requirements that were both obsolete or was lacking, and one of them was species at risk. We also did shoreline data. We started updating our shoreline as to what areas were critical for protection, what areas were hazardous for non-development purposes, and et cetera. So this will give you an example of, these are the categories that we have under the land use plan. And there was agricultural resources, cultural resources, which are our ceremonial areas, areas of concern, traditional sites, developmental resources in the form of housing, cemeteries, infrastructure, economic resources for future building, wind farm, solar, industrial, light industrial, our fish and habitat resources. We had to really identify where those resources were on the reserve. Our forestry resources, as you know, we are a large First Nation, so we do have forest activities occurring on our reserve, and we had to manage those as well and get data on that. Then we got the land allotments. We have over 1,200 land allotments on the reserve, and it requires a lot of surveying, transactions, and even cottage lots. Then we also get into the medicinal plants. And those require part of land use planning. Non-renewable resources, aggregates. We had at one time identified potential for a dolomite quarry on Wikwemikong. Recreational tourism, our campsites, ecotourism park, road resources. We have numerous roads on Wikwemikong, not only in form of primary and secondary roads, but we also have numerous forestry roads and trails. And our water resources, we have to know exactly what impacts of planning for water, rivers or lakes and our watersheds. We're a very strong community in the form of our language, our traditions, and our culture. You can't see it, I apologize, you can't see it on the map here, but this is our traditional names map. It outlines all the areas on Wikwemikong as to the traditional names, what the areas are reflecting to where everybody knows. I'll give you an example. The one on the northern part of Wikwemikong, you got Meshkodeyawang, which refers to the prairies. You got Bonongong, which is on the right over here, and over there. Bonongong, that refers to the clay cliffs, which is a very, when you get, for those of you that, well, I guess probably none of you will ever get out there, but we have the islands on the east coastline there, and when you're on Lonely Island and you look at those clay cliffs, it looks like a big giant waterfall from that angle. And then you got the Duedrong, which is down over here, and refers to the rapids, where you can hear the rapids. So there's numerous areas. All the words that you see in red are traditional names as to areas on Wikwemikong. We've also been incorporating this map to also include Manitoulin and the north shore of around from Espanola all the way to Sault Ste. Marie. So when it comes to our attachment to the land and our values that we have and hold true, it comes first with the names of those areas. Shoreline facts, getting back to the shoreline. I mentioned earlier that Wikwemikong, we have over, on the reserve there, we have over 220 kilometers of shoreline that we have to manage. And it's very critical that we need to know exactly what's going to be occurring on those shorelines in the future. Oops, sorry. So you get the different variety of shoreline that we have, and you have those big limestone boulders, you got the ledges, you got also the wildlife and the biodiversity of the area along that shoreline. When we first started doing the species at risk program back in 2007, 2008, we cruised the whole shoreline of Wikwemikong. Well, the majority was with the crew at the time. And this one section of land or shoreline that we came across was approximately 100 meters in length, and there was a lot of plant diversity along that shoreline that we were really amazed as how much plant diversity is along that shoreline, and it just goes to prove just how much we protect the land there. The majority of the shoreline around Wikwemikong is pretty much undeveloped, although the northern half is starting to get a little more cottage development from our band members. But the majority of it is all undeveloped. For Point Grondine, which is east of Killarney Provincial Park, we have 14,000 hectares of land there that we are part, because Wikwemikong is 3 bands comprised together of Point Grondine, Wikwemikong, and the Salt Bay West Band. We are also 3 tribes, part of the Three Fires Confederacy, Adawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi. So the Point Grondine is part of the Ojibwe band that amalgamated with Wikwemikong, and this shoreline here is the same thing. We got numerous species at risk along the shoreline, Masago rattlesnake, snapping turtle, and the guys have been, the crew has been cruising this shoreline for the past few years. Now, as we get into stewardship and innovation part, as mentioned earlier, we are the large reserve. So in order for us moving forward in the form of land use planning, we had to manage or separate the whole reserve into management units so that we could focus on each management unit separately as to what is on that management unit and what species at risk are on there and how we're going to move forward in protecting those species. So at the same time is we have being a large reserve, First Nation, we have the advantage of setting aside land for protection measures. And back in, before it even was a species at risk legislation in Ontario, or Wikwemikong, the chief and council back in the 80s, set aside 1,200 hectares of land on the southwestern portion of Wikwemikong for a wilderness area. This land base, the 1,200 hectares of land, is larger than some reserves in Canada. So for us to set aside a huge chunk of land for wilderness and protection is really sees as to what beneficial we can do for protecting the species that are out there. We also, as part of the land use planning process, we also have proposals to set aside further land. One is a multi-SAR zone that we have, it's called the Barrens. We have common nighthawk, dwarf lake iris, hills thistle, and Massasauga rattlesnake at one time on this location. And that's approximately 120 hectares of land that we'll also be setting aside for conservation. We also have Gadinger's aguilinus on the northern part of Wikwemikong. Approximately 2 acres of there will be set aside for species at risk protection. And we'll be setting aside another 800 hectares of land for a wilderness area on pretty much the interior of Wikwemikong, because there's a lot of old growth cedar and white pine in that forest. In the form of innovation, what we're doing for innovation is we're also doing a project for the MNR, the forestry sector. We're doing a forest resource inventory on the Crown Forest Management lands. So as part of that, as we're getting capacity and expertise in that area, we're also now moving forward in large-scale photography. What we are planning to do is to do 3-centimeter resolution aerial photography on vegetation mapping. And we hope that if we can prove that you can utilize aerial photography, the 3-centimeter resolution for vegetation mapping, we can probably identify species at risk in some areas and the habitat. Massasauga rattlesnake. We will be doing some pit tagging this year on Massasauga rattlesnake, and the crew actually will be going out to Toronto Zoo today to start the first phase of that. They'll be doing rattlesnake handling today and getting the know-how as how to handle rattlesnakes. And once we're done that, then they'll be heading out into the field this summer to do rattlesnake pit tagging. We are also on our 4th year of our life cycle study on hills thistle. MNR at the time, the Elvar recovery team indicated that they had no real data on hills thistle. They had it on pitcher's thistle, but not really on hills. So we are currently on 3 of a 7-year study on hills thistle to gather the life cycle study of it, as what happens to it when it becomes a rosette to a maturing flower. And it's providing a lot of valuable data for last year. This is an example of the management units. This is on Point Grondine. This is an ecotourism park that we're proposing for Point Grondine. As you know, Killarney and French River, Killarney on the west side and French River is on the east side of Point Grondine. Killarney, there's a 3-year, pretty much a 3-year waiting process for getting a campsite on Killarney Provincial Park. So for Point Grondine, we want to take advantage of that overflow and try to initiate an ecotourism park within the interior of Point Grondine. So a management unit will look like that, and for Point Grondine, it was separated into 10 management units, and the green there is the ecotourism park, and then for that, we've attached a management plan associated with each unit, and then that's just an example. I apologize for the font there. But we do have one that incorporates this page. The first page of this would be indicating what you can find within that management unit. And there's 2 additional pages. The first page would be the first 5 years of that operating plan, and then the 3rd page would be the last 5 years of the operating plan. And it gets revised every year. We have a working committee that will be sitting down together with all the band infrastructure or band administration, and we go over these management plans to identify if there's something new, if there's something needs to be changing. These are just an example of the species at risk that are found on Wikwemikong. Dwarf lake iris, hills thistle, Gadinger's aguilinus, and Houghton's goldenrod. A prime example of what the success for what we've been doing for species at risk is that dwarf lake iris, the amount of work that the crew has done over the past few years has now, our contribution to the COSEWIC, and I think maybe even the provincial, has downgraded dwarf lake iris to threatened now, as opposed, special concern as opposed to being threatened. We have millions and millions of dwarf lake iris on Wikwemikong. Same thing with Hills thistle. We have huge amounts of that. There's no eastern loggerhead shrike or no least bittern, but we do have the habitat there for it. Massago rattlesnake, Blanding's turtle, the milk snake, and eastern fox snake. Provincially listed species, we've got a whole host of them as well. Ram's head orchid is pretty kind of unique. It's growing on two separate areas on Wikwemikong, the northern half and then the southern half, which we found pretty unique. And some successes, lessons learned, and challenges. Our successes, as mentioned, is that we gathered a lot of information since 2007 regarding the species risk on Wikwemikong. We are also developing a shoreline management plan. We are involving the youth as much as we can in our surveys to get them to get familiar with their land and also get familiar with the species at risk program that we have. We've also been invited by the Misery Bay Provincial Park to be a partner with them because of our work that we've been doing. And we are also doing some stream assessments. At the same time is the challenges is that we have is the funding. Is always everybody knows that the funding you don't get approval for funding till probably July or August from the province, or even earlier or later from the feds. So funding is always the challenge. And the lessons learned is we got to make sure that we have the necessary people and the adequate people to do the work. And these are just some pictures of our land I just want to share. There's a couple other items that I want to say that I haven't included on the presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we are currently in negotiations with Ontario and Canada for islands immediately around Wikwemikong. And as part of moving forward and being progressive, we have surveyed all those islands already for species at risk, and we have identified a plan already as to what we'll be utilizing those islands once they become reserve status again. So we are moving forward in being progressive in that sense. We also are utilizing the use of fire on our alvars to promote the rejuvenation of those alvar fields. Historically, our elders have said fires have been a key component regarding keeping the natural diversity of the area. And we've been doing that, or actually, our kids have been doing that on the alvar fields every spring. And I'm sure it'll be starting pretty soon. But it is true that the fire is a key component regarding keeping the natural diversity of those alvar fields that we have. And one other thing too is last year Casero had their meeting over in Sudbury, their annual meeting in Sudbury, and they required a field trip that they wanted to see on Manitoulin Island. They got in touch with the other First Nations on Manitoulin, and nobody was able to accommodate them. They gave us a call, and we opened the door for them to come down and take a look at what we're doing. And I think they were looking for a 2-hour field trip to our area, and I think they ended up staying the whole day, and I think they wish they could have stayed a couple days. Just based on what they saw and what we're doing, and they really enjoyed that site visit, and we're looking forward that hopefully we can accommodate them again in the future. Other than that, thank you for listening to me, and hopefully I didn't keep you sleeping.